Wow.
Wow, this is some really deep stuff.
I don't know what just happened, but something happened inside of me. Something snapped, something.
I wasn't expecting that
either. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. It's beautiful.
Monster is like really small, but it had to become that to stop me.
And then the hurt child became present when you mentioned it.
And I didn't realize this until now.
There were things that I didn't remember until now.
Funny, I haven't seen that before.
And it feels like I'm the monster. I'm kind of seeing images of things, of a world where they can exist. This clarity brings all kinds of answers.
It's clear. She hugged me and then went back to her place, I guess, in my heart. Oh, it wants to come out. It wants to bippity boppity boop Cinderella me. She's melted into my chest. It's ooey gooey.
All week been finishing things, cleaning up more, started eating vegetables again last week. And it kind of just started happening. It's almost like I just finished going through a meditation session.
I feel light. When you hit that first joint, in the morning, and you...
I actually feel a lot more awake.
That you would like to get to know better, to change your relationship with? Would you like to pick up with anything we talked about last time, or where would you like to start?
Building on our last session, one of the things that I found was by being able to isolate where that tension was coming from, it seems to have moved, which is a good thing because it's not as much in my neck and my shoulders, but it's deep into my lower back.
Okay. Well, we can focus on that. Go ahead and focus on that sensation and just see what else you can notice about it. What other qualities it has. How is it?
It seems that as I kind of isolate it and try to feel where it's originating from, I'm noticing that it's intensified as I'm having to lead in my new role at my office.
Okay. And so what other definition do you see about that feeling? I got a location of it being in your lower back, but is it a tightness? Is it a pain? Is it dull, or any other sensations around it?
It's a dull ache, and until now, I really hadn't pinpointed that it was starting during the high points of my day, but that's kind of but it's a dull kind of not a tightness, but a dull, maybe light throbbing.
Okay. So see if you can just kind of turn inwards, turn towards it, and we're going to be calling everything a part. So if that's a part of you that's giving you that sensation, just see if you can kind of see it that way and if there's any kind of personification of it, let that come up. But don't make up any fictions either. So. A question.
I could attach a name. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
If I could attach a name to it, I'd say it's imposter numbness.
Ah, okay. So how close can you get to it? Can you put yourself in the room with it? And can you, sometimes people have a sensation where it's kind of avoiding them or facing the other way or something. And so, just do anything you can to kind of deepen your access and see how close you can get to it.
Okay. I'm next to it now, and it's actually, I don't know if it's because I was trying to breathe through it, and I like to focus with my eyes closed, but I'm seeing my former direct report supervisor because she is involved in part of the project that I have been assigned to that was involved in my promotion. And for some reason, she just came right a very vivid picture to identify with that kind of dull throbbing in my back.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we definitely internalize to all the people around us. So I'm wondering if that part looks like her, or if she's kind of just another part that's kind of in the room.
And I don't know if this is accurate, but I find that interesting because she and I have what I like to think is a very good relationship. I think our work styles clash very heavily, but our relationship seems to be one that I'm very comfortable with. Well, obviously not, but...
Okay. So this part has her nature then, has some of her qualities?
A lot.
Okay. So as you notice this sensation in this part beside you and causing this sensation in your back, how do you feel towards that part?
This may sound strange, but once I identified it and it kind of identified and produced itself as her, I became nervous. It made me nervous.
Okay.
I feel horrible because I know it's making her seem like a bad person and she's not, but it's just this nervous feeling came up once I identified it as her.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, to have that kind of feeling of guilt or whatever, implicating her in this, but this is all your inner world, and that part of you that feels bad about whose face gets attached to what parts. You can just ask that part to relax, because how parts show up is not really your control. And if for any reason you didn't want to share this conversation publicly, you could do that too, or we could anonymize there's lots of options there. So let that part know that That it doesn't have to have any shame or guilt around that.
Okay.
And then that nervous part, see if you can ask that for some space so that you can get to know this part that's causing this sensation in your back. And just see how it reacts.
Okay. That dullness is much smaller in my back and released, but things that I feel like maybe identify itself with that same person came up. I just not wanting to let anyone down that I've been led by.
Okay. So is that feeling of not wanting to let anyone down, is that emanating from this same part? Is it, or is that a different part? Different from the pain in the back part?
The pain in the back shrank, but when it did, that's when that manifested itself.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder if the... Go ahead.
No, I was coughing.
Oh. I was just wondering if maybe that pain in the back part is kind of protecting the not wanting to let anyone down part, because that sounds like kind of a vulnerable space to be in, you know. So I wonder if they're related, and if you can ask them how they operate together.
When this removes that first layer, the manifestation of not wanting to let anyone down shows me that it's tying itself back to that AVP, because I've never thought about this, and I don't know why it's coming up now. I do have a tremendous fear of letting anyone down, and it's probably, now that I'm looking at it, why I've always, even though I'm a high-level athlete in team sports, I've always gravitated towards individual sports.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's where that nervousness comes from when I identified it with her as not necessarily her, but maybe just me not wanting to let her down or feel like she backed my name and then I didn't do the quality of work that everyone in the organization was expecting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Try asking the part that was the pain in the back part. Try asking it what it wants you to know, or what it wants you to know about it.
it's wanting me to know that this is just from being raised with high expectations. And that's where the pressure is coming from. It's not necessarily a fear. It's a pressure of knowing that I did the right thing for the people that staked themselves behind me.
Yeah. Okay. So it's motivated by that, and it's wanting to motivate you to not let people down. So see if you can just kind of show it some appreciation for that intention that it has, even if you don't love the way it makes you feel.
Appreciation is something that's coming slow with this. Mentally, I feel like I'm doing everything. I've shown that I'm a high achiever. I've produced quality work, but I'm having a hard time appreciating it and delivering that appreciation to it because I feel like we're at odds with each other.
Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if, that makes sense to me. I'm wondering if you could, I'm just trying to find a way to kind of validate what it wants you to know. And so if you can show some solidarity for that kind of, it wants you to not let people down, you want to not let people down, and even if you're at odds and, having that pain around it, it at least seems to care about the same, kind of has the same value.
I think we're running headlong into each other because mentally, as I try to appreciate it, I still feel like it's holding back something that I'm very proud of and something that I take care of, and that's my body. And what I'm hearing it say is this is its way of, as corny as this is going to sound, what I'm feeling it's saying is this is my way of making sure you're identifying that you need to continue to push forward.
Yeah. Okay.
And mentally, I'm having a hard time appreciating that because since this came up in the last 3 weeks, I have to spend extra time stretching, extra time with mobility exercises. And it's saying this is pushing me and keeping me razor sharp. And mentally, it's hard to reconcile that.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, let's see if we can go back to kind of a baseline of curiosity about it so that you're not losing any ground by, saying, hey, it's great. It's awesome. But if we can kind of get back to that place of curiosity where any negative judgment we're asking to step aside. So there's a part of you that says, no, I hate this part. Well, let's see if we can just kind of ask that part to step aside and at least have come from kind of a curious base.
It's identifying to me that this is its way of giving me a precursor, trying to let me know in advance to not put myself in stressful situations, to stay focused and stay ahead and to follow my plan for success on my calendar.
Yeah. Try asking it what it's afraid of. If it didn't get your attention that way, if you lost focus, if you were put in stressful situations, just see if you can have it show you what it is specifically kind of afraid of. And you don't have to necessarily share it with me, but just to kind of see what its worst case kind of fears look like.
Wow, that came up quickly. Basically, it identified that it doesn't want me in a situation where I present myself differently than I like to, where I look like I've lost control in discussions. And maybe that's it trying to protect my pride. I'm very prideful that I'm known throughout our organization everywhere I've been, from being the calm lead, the person that's firm and understanding but never loses their cool, and is trying to protect me to keep that from happening where I do lose my cool.
Yeah. Okay. So let it know. Let it know how much you get that message, that you feel the sensation it's sending you loud and clear. And again, I would try to see if you can show some appreciation, some or just sympathy for the job it's doing, in trying to keep you safe and keep you having the control that you need, and not losing your cool and not letting people down.
That's funny. After kind of coming forth with it and meeting some reconciliation space where I could let it know I appreciate it and I understand it, although I'm sitting in a chair that's comfortable anyway, literally, it was almost like, I don't know the way to describe it, except like when maybe you've had a bad headache and you've taken like an ibuprofen and you feel the headache start to go away after it kicks in. It's literally like dissipating that numbness, that throbbing.
Yeah, that's great. You got a direct line of communication with it. It can get your attention, and it can stop getting your attention. Try asking it if you could change or heal whatever its worried about, whatever it's protecting, which sounds like it's worried about, you losing your cool. And you're telling me that you've worked really hard to be in a place where you're pretty on top of it. So it might not have it might not be seeing the whole picture of where you are in your life now. But try asking it, if you could handle all that for it, what else would it like to do inside of you?
It would like to help me be more at peace with who I am in the corporate world, who I am in the academic world, rather than just as an athlete.
Okay. So before it was kind of pushing you on a physical level, and it would like to be more working on those other levels.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I think what it's leading me to is having a better understanding that my athletic success doesn't have to be a detriment. I don't have to be afraid to let people know that I'm a former athlete. I don't have to worry once people look me up as a world kickboxing champion and think that they're going to think different of me and think that I'm just another dumb jock and that, I'm getting by on charisma. And it wants me to understand that those two things can exist together.
That's a pretty major job that it wants to take on. I mean, that's a powerful role, I would say, to balance all of that.
I've never even thought about that before.
Sometimes it's good in this space when you've asked it that question of what else it would like to do, to just let it show you and get creative and go to some fantasy places and say, okay, what would that look like here? What would that look like there? And kind of let it off the leash a little so it can, just kind of show you what that looks like if it hasn't already.
Oh, wow. A couple of scenarios it showed me as having taken a role that my now supervisor took that I turned down because I just didn't feel like I was ready, and that there were a few too many people who knew I was a former athlete, but I still, am involved in a lot of athletic endeavors. It's showing me that I could have taken a job as an athletic director without having to feel like, oh, you're just another athlete taking the typical athlete role.
Yeah.
And I guess I wasn't expecting to see those.
That's cool. This is all optional, but this part, you might try asking it if there are other parts that it protects, if there are other parts stuck in chaotic times or times when, when you were feeling like being called, I forget how you said it about, the high expectations that you had growing up.
seeing it, identifying the fears I developed early on as a high achiever, and having instances where I felt like I let people down, but they were still proud of me for doing everything that I could. And letting that kind of identify the steps I took in my path forward, developing caution when there wasn't necessarily caution needed in situations, being afraid to volunteer for opportunities when it would have benefited me in college and afterwards, and in my career. And being able to identify those things, it's showing me things that I didn't even remember. I didn't even remember when I was an adjunct professor that I declined to actually take a scholarship to work on my PhD just because I didn't feel like I would be accepted the way, but I remember that now. I am old, but that was not all that long ago.
Yeah.
And I forgot about it. I pushed it aside.
Yeah, it was probably a good deal of psychic kind of pain or just discomfort around a lot of that, it sounds like, and that's what our protective parts do, is they come in to push those away.
And it brought back another memory from that time when I was having to make that decision. I was having this exact same pain, except magnified. And ironically, my wife made me go to a doctor, love her, the good Dr. Coleman. And she sent me to a doctor, and the doctor's like, I can't find anything wrong. But they gave me, what was it called back then? E-stim, where they did some kind of electric heat.
Yeah.
And it would give me temporary relief, but then as soon as I would be right back in the situation, that radiated numbness would be right back there.
Wow. Huh.
Maybe you're right. I had never thought about it like that. Maybe it is a protective measure.
Might try asking it how old it thinks you are and just wait for the answer.
Wow, it's very optimistic. It thinks that I'm 29.
College days?
No, it was during the time when I was doing adjunct work.
Yeah.
In between fights, and I had to make some decisions. A lot at that time.
Yeah.
My wife had just finished her doctorate and become I don't know the right terms, I'm going to say a full speech pathologist. And I was looking towards, what I was going to do after my fighting career. We were pregnant, with our third and fourth kid. We just found out they were twins. And
wow.
There were just all of these decisions that I was having to make at that time. Now that it's kind of bringing it to my attention.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's so much optimism as it is just it's kind of stuck in that time a little bit. So just update it on your real age. And again, we're trying to take its burden away by saying, look, I'm not 29 anymore, and I can handle some of these things that it's been, banging the bell about. It doesn't need to work so hard.
That's interesting. I'm curious how these protective measures, your psychic measures, how they come into place where they identify with those. Well, I guess that's something I'd have to do at a later date. But
Oh, well, I'm happy to explain a little bit because I don't have a lot of more questions. I mean, the only further question for this part, I would say, is to ask it what it needs from you in the future.
what it needs from me in the future is to be more decisive on things that involve me showing my intellect, that don't involve physicality. For me to be less afraid of having confrontations with people where they can draw me into where it looks like I'm being aggressive. And to be unafraid of that, and to be unafraid to be smart.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, it wants that. It wants that. You said decisiveness, and a lot of these parts. That's what they need. Is that kind of. They want you to, or they. If you are the leader, then they don't have to make as much noise. If you have that decisiveness, then they're not playing catch up or having to get your attention some other way.
I just find it interesting, and especially with the way you just described it, that mechanism or that defense mechanism's way of getting my attention and going, okay, hey, change directions. But I'm not necessarily sure I've always identified it. Hell, I'll say it. I'm pretty certain I hadn't identified it until just now.
Yeah.
And hopefully that doesn't make me sound like I'm not in touch with myself, but I never would have identified that directly.
I mean, it makes you sound like every person I've talked to in IFS conversation, because this is a very new paradigm that nobody's taught. It's pretty radical, really. Just even the notion that there are parts and you can talk to them and they have whole worlds to show you. They have memories to show you. They have times and periods and their own intentions. They might even have their own parts. You asked, kind of like why 29, or how does it, what's the mechanism there? And I think that, a part kind of shows up or gets activated or has to work a little extra hard generally when we're overwhelmed. When we're overwhelmed, and that can be by tons of big decisions. It can be by trauma. It can be by abuse. Anything. And then this part has to get into gear and kind of take the reins a little bit. And usually that's through something that's not always comfortable and pleasant, but it's getting you out of a situation that's overwhelming.
And I just never would have put two and two together on that myself.
Yeah, I'm laughing because you say 2 and 2, like hey, anybody would know this, but no, it's.
Yeah, I guess I guess that's why there are experts, right? That's why that's your field of expertise. I guess it makes sense.
Hardly, but yeah. Now this is all pretty new stuff in the psychological world. This field has only been around for 30 years, and the way it's done now. And the other thing I was going to say is that time period, it can take you back to 29. And I imagine that there's layers and layers. There's the adjunct professor time. You mentioned times when you were in college. You might have had a similar overwhelm making decisions then, and I imagine that probably has another layer of what it is protecting at an even younger age. And a lot of times you kind of keep peeling back these layers until you get to a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old or something very young, a very young part that was really overwhelmed and didn't have any real tools to deal with it other than these internal psychological, I won't call them distractions, but they can get us out of the situation, even if that causes some damage or some locking away of those sensitive parts.
All about protection and making you better.
Yeah, that's what they all have a good intention. Even the parts that make us addicted, even the parts that do all kinds of bad things in the world. If you look kind of behind the curtain and get to know the part, you see that it has a good intention. It wants to put out a fire, usually in somebody.
It's actually, I don't want to go as far as to say therapeutic and sound like a homer, but it's actually oddly relaxing and calming.
Yeah. Well, you're orienting your system and you're getting more parts, I think, kind of on the same team and working together and taking a burden away from this part and shifting it over to, okay, I can handle this. You can have this role, you can have that role. It's kind of like a coach, or a captain. So yeah, it is relaxing when you're in touch with them and they're not having to get your attention through, ways that don't work for you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I would say give a big thanks to that part of yours that was opened up to you. I would say give a thanks to the other parts that you asked to step aside. You had nervousness in there. You had this part that was judgmental and said, "No, this part of me is just a pain in the back," and so you can invite those parts back in and say, and show them the work that you did, and just see how they react, or show them appreciation for giving you space, or let them know that they're next on your list of parts to get to know.
All right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
If I get selected for another session, I think, and I mean, you tell me intuitively this makes sense to me because that's kind of how I learn. But you tell me if this makes sense for me. I'd like to bring a notebook into my office and document some of the things that I say and how the part spoke to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I take about a page of notes in most of my calls, and then what I'll do when I'm in this position, when I'm in the other seat, I also take notes. And what I'm thinking of doing with this podcast that still is unpublished is maybe putting just some of the basics, like here's the part, and here's what it felt like, and here's what it wanted, and just kind of making like a bullet list of kind of the parts that were approached. So I'm already kind of documenting that for people. I can share that with you, and of course I'll share the call with you. You can listen back.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, does it feel complete? Do you have a good way you'd like to end this, or any other questions?
Do you have time for one more question?
Absolutely.
So in identifying that as it, and again, I'm going to use a term that hopefully doesn't make me sound like I'm trying to be a pseudo-intellectual, but it's the only way I can describe it. As we're identifying that part, it's like that part is going, okay, here's what I'm going to give you. As you relate to me better, I'm going to give you another little piece to identify. Should that be a natural feel? Is that what I should be feeling? Because that seems to be what's happening when we do this.
Yes, that sounds right to me.
Okay.
And so that, again, that could be, you could put all that in parts language where you've got to know this part and it kind of reveals either parts of itself or other parts. So the typical way that it's phrased in the IFS textbooks is like you have your protector parts and then you have your exile parts. And so again, those are usually the younger, vulnerable, hurt, overwhelmed, scared parts. Those exiles, those are feelings we want to get rid of so much that the protectors come in and kick ass. They come in and either do a lot of managing, a lot of sticking to the calendar, or they will show up in that numbing, addictive, destructive, sometimes self-destructive or other destructive behavior, just to get some release from that pain. So yeah, that's usually how it goes is you get to know the part, and then they can point to basically, yeah, who they're protecting you from, or who they're working with, who they're in cahoots with, and yeah, you just keep following that trail.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like I said, I'm trying to be more open to this each time we've done it. So
you're doing fantastic. I would say you're supremely open to it, and it's really enjoyable for me and to be able to work with you. So thank you.
No, my pleasure, man. Thank you so much again, and have a wonderful and safe weekend.
Okay, you too. Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Do you want to help bring more self-energy to the world? If you'd like to participate in calls or help out with this project in any way, I'd love to hear your ideas. Join the Discord server or contact me at james@liveifs.com. A huge thanks to our audio engineer, Zikri, for your care and diligence in editing the calls. To every caller for your courage in sharing some of your parts. And to anyone out there getting to know their internal system, keep going. Who knows, that might be the most selfless, helpful thing you can do for others, and you're the only one who can do it. If you'd like to see us reach the largest audience, we must please the almighty suggestion algorithms at iTunes and YouTube, and they don't care about the power of IFS. They're looking for likes and shares and comments, and the sooner the better. Follow the links in the show notes right here in your podcast player to make your wishes known. And now, a minute of meditation, or if you prefer, pull over You can do it in 60 seconds. Just click one of those links. They're right there, and give us a like or a 5-star rating. It would really help. If you think this project is helping people, you're helping people by sharing it. Thank you.